doing, introducing myself to the teacher because I might not have worked with all of them, and then I will ask to see that. So it's your responsibility to print those 3 things out, to sign them, to scan them, and to send them back, okay? Any questions on that? All right, so the sequence of the placement, let's look at that. Like I've stated already, week 1, observation, some beginning teaching. Week 2, you should be teaching something. Secondary folks, you should probably be taking over 1 class period at least. Elementary people, you should be taking over 1 content area at least. Elementary folks, you just finished up in your level 2 reading. Secondary people, you finished up in your level 2s. You've been teaching, you've been planning, you know what's going on, okay? So we're not just throwing you into the fire with this. Weeks 3 through 7, teaching. You need to teach full-time, a total of no less than 3 weeks, okay? No less than 3 weeks should you be the full-time teacher. Could you be the full-time teacher for 7 of the 8 weeks? Yeah, that would be even better. And some of you are going to go in and you are going to be put with people and you're going to be the full-time teacher from like day 2. They're going to be like, oh, here you go. We try to avoid that, but I mean, it's good practice. As much practice as you can get, right? So look at it that way. The last week typically is like a reflection observation. Sometimes people are still wrapping up their units. So, that's going to be happening. You may still be teaching. If you are, that's great. A lot of the times in elementary, you may go visit other classrooms, observe, get a feel for how other people do things, because not everybody's the same. There's the reminder right there that you must complete and submit all of those things to me by January 22nd. Do not drop off a hard copy. I will put it in the shredder. If you all have seen my office, my current space, it's about that big. I do not have room for any papers coming in. It all needs to be digital, okay? All right, so the requirements. During your first placement, you're going to teach a 5 to 10 day unit. All right, most people it's longer than 5 days, but it has to be at least 5 days. During your second placement, you're going to teach a 5-day unit, okay? In order to receive credit for student teaching, you're going to do those things. You have to successfully complete your teacher performance assessment. Dr. Lucas and Dr. Watson are going to talk to you about that. We have to have successful completion of the capstone presentation. We will talk more about that as the time nears. All items have to be completed by specific due dates. That means if you will look on this thing I've got right here, I have a lot of dates on there. You guys see that on the side? TPA due date tentative March 15th, 2019. Okay? That does not mean that you submit it on March 16th or March 19th. You submit it by March 15th because that's the due date. In the past, we have had students who just didn't submit it. So, on time. It has to be submitted on time. Same thing when it comes to the capstone presentation. When we do that, I usually block off 3 days here on campus. It's likely going to be in April sometime. And you have a day, and you have a time, and you have a place, and you need to be there. All right? Unless something catastrophic happens. Successful completion of all student teaching placements, including acceptable evaluations from your cooperating teacher and your university supervisor. Has anyone ever failed because they didn't get a good evaluation? Yeah. They have received no credit. Then you have to appeal and repeat. We don't just graduate everybody around here, all right? You have to be successful at your TPA. You have to be successful in your capstone. You have to receive satisfactory evaluations, all right? Those are non-negotiables. Okay. Any questions? All right. with the capstone presentation, I will have a separate seminar where we will talk extensively about this and the expectations of it. But this is just sort of a general overview. You have a 30-minute appointment window, okay? And you have a panel of judges. 3 judges, usually a Marshall University faculty, a public school person, either a teacher or an administrator, and a university supervisor, okay? Who've all been trained on the capstone presentation and on the rubric, which you'll get all of that, okay? You will present to them basically a reflection of your student teaching experience from the first placement. You have a rubric that you go by, which is very specific, okay? So if you go by the rubric, it shouldn't be a problem. You should be able to reflect on your strengths and your weaknesses. You should be able to discuss the lessons taught, your data acquired. The reason I go ahead and tell you this now is because artifacts are suggested. So that means if you're going to teach your unit, like when you go in and meet your teacher tomorrow and they say, hey, would you like to teach like a groundhog unit, a unit on winter animals or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, awesome. Well, that's the last week of January. Well, we're not going to have this capstone seminar before then, but that gives you an idea of, hey, anything I do during my unit, I need to hang on to a few of those things, okay? Artifacts are definitely suggested. And like I said, we will have a seminar prior to these presentations that outlines everything and goes over every single aspect. All right, good. Yes?
I'm writing this all down.
Okay, go ahead. Well, I've sent it to you, and I sent the PowerPoint to you, so you don't have to write any of this down. Okay, next thing, repercussions. What if things don't go well? Or what if this happens? Okay, so a plan of improvement. A plan of improvement can happen for anything, okay? There have been, like I said, most of the time, they're over attendance. Sometimes they are over just not being prepared for teaching. That includes lesson plans, having your materials ready. You know, there's nothing more annoying to a classroom teacher than if a student teacher doesn't have lesson plans and doesn't have copies made or doesn't have, you know, everything ready to go when they walk in. If they're in there making copies and they're supposed to be in class, that's a real problem. Okay? So you need to be prepared. You need to have everything together. But we can write a plan of improvement for anything that's listed on the rubric that you're not meeting those needs, okay? If you have a plan of improvement written, I'll call you. You have to come in and talk to me. Dr. Lucas might be there because she's the program director. Dr. Allen might be there if you're an MAT student. And we will just have a major conversation. The plan of improvement will it'll lay out what the problems are, what you have to do to fix them, and what happens if you don't fix them, okay? You also have to complete the assessment pieces by the due dates. Plan of improvement or no credit may occur if a student does not complete assessments on time. Okay. Dr. Lucas may bring this up when she's talking about the TPA. The TPA is due on a Friday this year. It was due on a Friday last semester and the semester before. And someone on that due date, on that Friday, I just happen to be working late. Like I typically, when I leave for the weekend, I try not to check my email at home because I'm at home. You know, unless it's, you know, I'm expecting something important or serious or something like that. And I just happened to still be in the office, and it was 5:30 probably. And I had this email come through from a student that said, Ms. Priest, I have a problem with submitting my TPA today. Okay. First off, I left it open on my laptop, on my kitchen counter. And while I was at school today, my cat walked all over my laptop. And when I went to close it, there were several windows opened, and I shut it down, and it pulled back up the version from 2 weeks ago. but it gets better. Not only did this student's cat walk all over their laptop that day, but they also had it saved on a jump drive that they were working on a school laptop, which they should have been doing anyway, during their planning period. And they pulled that jump drive out without properly disconnecting it. Okay, I'm just gonna make this statement. I have never properly done that. I just yank it out. Who else in here just yanks? Oh, come on. I was not born yesterday. And when I pulled it out, it reverted back to my old one. What should I do? I said, I would get to work. And I would turn in what I have by 11:59. I mean, seriously. I have heard every excuse, and I have heard excuses that you couldn't dream of, obviously. Okay, and I'm not a moron. So, don't put things off until 11:59 on the day they're due. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Get yourself together. Dr. Lucas will talk to you a little bit more about this, and some supervisors require this, but if I was going to do the TPA, I would sit down and I would be like, okay, it's this many tasks, this is what it requires, and I would set due dates for myself to get those pieces of that done, and I would have mine turned in well before March 15th. I would also keep my laptop away from my cat. I would also properly eject my jump drive. Even though when we're done today, I'm going to rip that thing right out of that computer, and I'm not going to do that. So, just so you know. You have to get your stuff done on time. Non-negotiable. Okay? Okay, things to remember. You're on a 16-week job interview. Okay? A lot of you are like, yeah, sure I am. Okay, you really are. Right now, I have counties begging for teachers. I get some sort of call or email. I would say, every day, every other day, a principal calls me, somebody will call me. I had 3 students start on a TIR in one county after the fact because one principal called me and said, could we still do a TIR? And I said, well, yeah, we can. This is this past semester, and it was probably like mid-September. We'd probably been student teaching for about a month. And so that student got a TIR. Well, then another principal heard about it, and they're like, can you get me one? Yeah, I can get you one. I'll fix it. So we got another student. And then another principal heard about it. Can you get me one? Yeah, I got you one. Do you see where I'm going with this? You're on an interview. Wayne Elementary had 2 student teachers this past semester. One of them got hired in her permanent job on Tuesday night and started in her own classroom with her own contract with everything. The other one already has basically every day scheduled to the end of the year because there's somebody going on maternity leave. So she's already scheduled in to do those. Okay. Principals are taking student teachers for an interview. They're watching, okay? They know what's going on. So you're on an interview. You need to be professional all the time. You need to show that you want to be a teacher. You need to be excited about being in the classroom. So many times we fall into bad habits. Sometimes teachers who have been teaching for 30 years are still fired up about teaching, and sometimes they aren't. And if we fall into those bad habits of sitting in the lunchroom and complaining about the kids, that's one thing I'm going to say. Stay away from the lunchroom if you can. Do you know what I'm talking about that? Or if you're in there, just listen. Do not offer up anything. Because you're going to get some bad advice. You're going to hear from people who are just not happy with what they're doing. Okay? And maybe never were. Who knows? Don't fall into those traps. Okay? You need to make connections and you need to build relationships. One of those student teachers, Her teacher she was placed with had to take a medical leave in the middle of the placement. And do you know what? The teacher called me and said, I would never say this about anybody else, but we're getting this great substitute in. They're retired. They're awesome. Leave her here and let her stay in this classroom because these kids love her. She is doing an awesome job. I trust her fully. She can run this classroom when I'm not in there. Okay? That's pretty awesome to hear. Everything is a learning experience, the good and the bad. You're going to learn from things. Like I said, you know, when you talk out in public or when when you make mistakes, you're going to learn from them. Don't make mistakes that you can't come back from, though. You're going to make the mistake of not having your stuff together one time, probably. Or you're going to make the mistake of depending upon the internet. You're going to make the mistake of depending upon the Wi-Fi for your lesson, and it's not going to work. You got to have a contingency, you know, and you're just going to go from there, and it's going to be okay. But everything is a learning experience. Please know this. Please understand this. Good and bad. But just do remember, you're on an interview. Like I said, there are counties who are begging for teachers all the time. And I'm going to have people who are going to ask me for students and for recommendations and for things like that. Don't make me, when somebody calls me and asks me about your name, don't make me say, I'd rather not say. Because I will never tell a county to not hire somebody, but if I wouldn't want my kid in your classroom, I will just say I'd rather not say. That speaks volumes. Okay. Something else I wanted to, gosh, now I can't even think right now. Okay, let's talk about this for a minute. We're near the end of this little session. All right, so who has a question? Oh, come on.
There is like terrible snowstorm that blows through.
Okay.
Do we need to make up those days?
No.
Let's say if it's gone for, we don't need to make it on the end.
Here's, and let me just say this. I have the words tentative by most things. You know, I set our dates. I set our calendar the semester before. You know, I'm getting ready to set the fall calendar right now. Sometimes things do happen though. Like I was talking about that very first full semester I was here, there was a ton of bad weather. And we had to change our dates and we had to extend by a few days at the end. And I'll leave us plenty of cushion for that because, and it wasn't because we wanted you all to go extra days or anything like that. It was just because students couldn't get things in. They couldn't get their units taught. They couldn't get their documents turned in. Last spring, what I have going on? Y'all know we had a walkout going on. I mean, you want to see somebody stressed? I got a husband who's a principal, who's not going to get paid if we go on strike because he's not going to cross. I got, me as a former teacher and all my friends in this, and then I got all y'all. And I'm worried about you getting your time in. And I mean, it was just super stressful. Things that we did last semester or that last spring semester is we changed our dates a little bit. We had to adjust them by a few days. So not everything, I mean, we set these, but they're not set in stone. I would never, if we miss 2 days for snow, add 2 days on at the end. That's not what we do, okay? So just know that. If we do need to make adjustments, though, you're the first to know. All right, next question. Yes, back.
So Kanawha County has their student teachers get a badge too?
Yes.
Do I wear the Kanawha County badge or the Marshall badge or both?
Wear the Kanawha County badge.
Okay.
Yeah, have the Marshall badge with you, just like in your bag, but wear the Kanawha County badge because it's more for them. Yeah. Okay, Sarah.
For secondary students with the 5 to 10 day unit plan, if our teacher has like multiple courses throughout the day, like for example, mine has like creative writing and English 11 and then a block class that's starting over, do I do a 5 to 10 day unit for all of them?
Okay, Dr. Lucas will clarify this when we're talking about the TPA, but no. Secondary folks, you're gonna pick one focus class, okay? So it might be your 7th period world history, or it might be your 6th period calculus, or whatever it is. that's your focus class. So that's where you're gonna write your unit, that's what you're gonna write your TPA on. So when we start getting video forms back and that sort of thing, you're not expected to get 115 permission slips, okay? Just one class. Does that help some people? Okay. Yes.
So if we get the illness, should we go to the doctor to get excused absence?
It's not the illness, it's the virus.
Virus.
Yeah. Different way is the virus, yeah. You can, yeah. Some people will just make up the day at the end if they think it's just a one-day sort of thing. If I could go to student health, I would go to student health, if you're able. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Listen, I had the virus one year. I had it 3 times in like a month and a half. And they came in and bleached my classroom. They're not even supposed to do that. I was never so sick in my life, but I just kept getting it over and over. And there's no way I could have driven or left the house those days, you know, so I know how it is. But, yes?
So you're saying that, like with secondary, we have the 5 to 10 day unit.
Yeah.
That's the unit that we create on our own,
Yes.
and then the rest of the time we teach what the teacher has.
Okay, this is a good question. This comes up. You can teach what the teacher, you know, from the manuals or this and that. You're writing your own lesson plans though, okay? Anything you teach, you need to have a lesson plan for it. Does this make sense? Okay? You are not to take the teacher's plan book online and print it off and just teach from that, okay? Now, can you all sit together and work together and come up with sure, that's not a problem at all. But you're not gonna have your teacher writing the lesson plans and then just print them out and you teach them, okay? You're gonna have to come up with some things. Be creative, you know, come up with some really good stuff on your own. You know, my daughter right now has this social studies teacher. And he's probably, okay, first off, he's her favorite person in the world. She's 12. He's her favorite person. Like, she likes him way better than she likes me and her dad and her friend. Because A, he's cool. He's really cool. And B, he makes it fun. He makes it great. Megan was actually in this room. He's great, isn't he? I mean, and as a parent, when I'm helping her with her homework, I'm like, man, I wish I thought of that. You know? He did a assignment where they were doing Greek gods, and they had to come up with a playlist, like of music that went back to that Greek god. That's pretty cool. I love that. I was digging, you know, working on that assignment with her. Yeah, he's great because he's creative. He was not, and he was an MAT student. He was not originally an undergrad social studies major. He came from advertising or marketing, something like that. And so he thinks a little differently, out of the box sometimes. I think sometimes we get stuck in a rut, okay? And my students who I supervise, we're gonna talk about this today. We talked about social media. Use social media platforms and seek out people that can help you with that creativity if you're not creative. You know, follow their Instagram handles or, you know, follow them on Teachers Pay Teachers and look at what they're doing in their classrooms or read their blogs. Guys, about, I don't know, I'm trying to think, probably 10 years ago, I was teaching 2nd grade and I came home one day and I told my husband, I said, I just don't think this is for me anymore. I was teacher of the year like the year before at that school. And then I'm like, I don't think this is what I'm supposed to do. And he was like, I think you need to think about that. I think you're just having a burnout moment. I think you're just struggling. I had a really hard, bad class that year. You know, it was a lot going on. And so I just started reading a few blogs of these teachers who, one was in Texas and one was in Kentucky, and things they were doing in their classroom. And it made me rethink how I taught. And it changed everything about how I was teaching that year, and I ended up having a great year, okay? Seek out advice. Seek out people who can help you and make it great teaching. Don't just get that manual and go by. Do not. Yes?
Can we do reflective journals daily as well, like we did?
Okay. My supervisees, I require a reflective journal from them. It's up to your university supervisor. So, but I'm just going to say this, even if they don't require them, I would have one. I still have my stuff from when I did my STEAM teaching. I have a VHS tape of me teaching power writing back in the day. It's just good to reflect on. you know? And then in 5 years, when you still got that journal, you'll be like, oh my gosh, look how far I've come. Or there were things I learned in classes here that I wrote down. And back in the day, Dr. Backus taught all the level 2 reading, and there was not a textbook. She put together her own thing, and the bookstore printed it, and it was like this thick. And they called it the Backus Bible, and it was like ridiculous, and we had to drag it around. But the last year I taught, I was still pulling stuff out of that, like vocabulary activities, okay? So I would always keep my things with me. Teachers are hoarders anyway, so, you know, hang on to your stuff. All right, other questions? Yes?
Macon County, this coming Friday, has a curriculum development day, so there's no school. Is curriculum development something a class that teachers go to, or is it something they're at the school doing?
It could be one or the other. I would find out from my cooperating teacher what they're doing. It could be just, you know, meetings within the school. If it's that, I would totally be there. You know, if they're going out and you can go. If you can't, then I would make sure I could work at the school that day. You know, you could be writing lesson plans or getting some stuff together. Okay. Yes?
For our second placement, are we gonna be at the same school or a different?
Elementary people for the most part are at the same school. I still have like 2 placements in the elementary that I have to get together. Secondary I still have a few that I have to make. What happens a lot of the times with secondary is, let's say, you know, Liz Oval is awesome and her teacher is talking about her, and they know somebody at the high school, and so they shoot them a text, hey, I've got this great student teacher, you ought to take her next time. You see what I'm saying? And then I get a request from the school. You know, I'm looking at people right now who got requested by a teacher they were with. You know, it happens. So I will be sending those out within the next month, so you can go ahead and be prepared and set in. But no, elementary for the most part stay where they're at. Yeah, we try to keep you just a continuous supervisor with the elementary. It's tough with the middle school and the high school because you're going to be at both, and we have certain supervisors who cover certain territories. Mr. Woodworth covers Cabell Midland. Brady Davis covers Huntington High, but Mr. Hawks is going to cover Huntington High some too. You see what I'm saying? So you will have different supervisors for the most part. Okay. Other questions? Yes?
Do we log our hours on that?
Great question. Yes. By Thursday, everyone's placement should be showing up in live text. That is the date I have on the calendar for that to get finished. We don't just put them in as a group. Every single one of you are individually placed through live text, okay? I have to click on the student, then I have to find the school, then I have to click on the teacher, then I have to click the dates, and then we make the placement. When the placement's made, you'll get the email. You guys have probably gotten the email before from live text saying you have a placement in live text. On Thursday, I'm going to send everybody an email that says, if your placement isn't showing up in live text, I need you to let me know ASAP. All right? And we'll get that taken care of. You have to log your time in live text every single day. It does not have to be extensive in that description of every single thing you did for the day. You can just put student teaching, you can just put observation, whatever, but you have to log your time. So you need to log from the time you get there to the time you leave. Understood? Because this is just like in level 2 and even in level 1. The cooperating teacher at the midterm and at the final of both placements will log in, they will approve your time, and they will complete the evaluation. Okay? Same thing with the supervisor. The teacher, though, we expect to check off the time because they're the one who sees you every day. Now, a lot of them will be very serious, and if they see a discrepancy, they'll let me know. I've had people who didn't get credit in level 1 or in level 2 because they fudged their time. Do not do that. You will get caught. I'm pretty stealth about that. I'm just kidding. I will catch you though, so don't do it. Just be honest, okay? There's no reason to be, shady about that. Just put it in. Everybody will get that time log. It's just the same. And if you have any questions or you're confused about how to enter that or you don't really remember, just holler at me and I'll help you with it. It's not a big deal. Everybody should be in by 4 o'clock on Thursday though. So if you don't get it, put it in till Thursday, log in on Thursday and go back and do them, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, put your time in. You don't have to log in to Live Text every day to put that in. I would do it a couple of times a week at the minimum. That way you don't get so behind and then you're putting in like a month at a time. If I log in and pull you up and you don't have any time in your time log in like the next 3 weeks, I'm gonna be aggravated. And I'm gonna call you out on it, okay? So don't let that go. On the evaluation, let's talk about this for a minute because I will get a phone call. We want everybody to be acceptable, okay? Everybody looks at like a rubric as like a 4, 3, 2, 1, right? We don't want you to necessarily look at that like a total score. Here's what I'm looking for when I check those rubrics, because I'm gonna check them at the midterm and then I check them at the final and every time. We don't want any unsatisfactories. I make sure nobody has anything in that column. That's it. We expect everybody to be basically a 2. Nobody in here is a 4. I know, but my mom says I'm great. My mom says I'm perfect. I know, you are, but you're not a 4. I'm not even a 4. Nobody's a 4, okay? If your teacher does give you a 4, they must really like you and think you're pretty awesome. In all the years I've been doing this and all the people I've supervised, I don't believe I've ever given a 4. I think I might have given a 1. And it's because this student was better than me. She was pretty awesome. So, don't be expecting 4s. A lot of the times people will pull that evaluation up and look at the bottom and there's a percentage. Ignore it. I don't even look at it. I look and make sure there's no 1s. That's what I'm looking at. Okay? So when that comes to your mind, I have had people call me crying. My teacher doesn't like me. She just gave me 2. Oh, they like you fine. You're doing okay. You're doing a fine job. If you got a 2, it's all good. All right. So just know that. I saw hands over here.
I was just gonna ask if the seminar hours, like when we come in here, do they count towards?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll just count those seminar hours. I have 2 seminars listed, tentative, here on campus, the 31st and the 12th. Today, when Dr. Lucas talks to you, you'll be talking about the task 1 from the TPA. Those 2 seminars is where they will talk about the other tasks of the TPA. All right? I'll be filming those seminars like I do everything else, posting them online. So if you leave that seminar and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't remember what they said, you can go back and watch it again. I'm pretty on top of that kind of thing. But yeah, count your seminar time. And when we have those seminars, and I'll reiterate this, but like, I think I've got them starting at 1 or 2 o'clock. Obviously, you have to go to school that morning. And, you'll leave in time to get here. I've had people in the past who try to leave their school at, in Huntington at 11 to come to a 2 o'clock seminar. I drive from Wayne every day. I know how long it takes for people to drive places. I mean, come on. So, but we'll talk more about that. But yeah, you'll count that time. It's not a problem. Yeah.
What about people who are in Charleston?
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll allow, yeah. I mean, I'll say, if you are in Charleston or Logan or here, leave at this time, leave at this time. I mean, it's just, I try to give like a professional leniency and responsibility onto you. But if the teacher says, do they have to come to school that day? Yeah. Which I've had. People try to, those are also good days if you are taking the PLT, you need to take it in the morning or something, you could do that. We could work that out. So, anything else? Come on. Yes.
So how do we receive a grade for student teaching?
Okay. Yeah. So student teaching is a credit, no credit. Okay. You don't get an A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay. It's a credit, no credit. In order to get credit, I don't need this thing. It wasn't on. Okay. In order to get credit, you have to have 2 acceptable final evaluations. That means you have to have a final evaluation that doesn't have any unsatisfactories on it from your teacher and from your supervisor. Could you have a midterm that has an unsatisfactory on it? Yeah. If you have a midterm that has an unsatisfactory on it, you have to come see me. We do a plan of improvement. We work on what the problem is, okay? Most of the time, I will just say this, if people have received unsatisfactories on a final evaluation, they are not surprised. Okay? This is something that we've talked about before, we're leading up to it, that kind of thing, all right? So you have to get no unsatisfactories on a final evaluation. You have to have your time logged and your teacher check your time log off. You have to successfully complete the capstone. We'll talk more about that, like I said. And you have to successfully complete the TPA. Now, Dr. Lucas will tell you this today. Let's say the TPA is due March 15th. It is then sent out to a specified grader, which is a faculty in the university that has been trained on how to grade the TPA, okay? And let's say they grade it and your task 3 and 4 are not very good, okay? They're gonna give that back to you, saying you didn't pass on task 3, section A and B, and task 4, section A. Please revise these and resubmit. Then you're gonna resubmit it, okay? And the grader's gonna grade it again. And then if you still haven't fixed your task 3, section A, then they're gonna wanna talk to you and meet with you to really pinpoint maybe what you're not understanding or what they're wanting and they're not seeing, that kind of thing. Have we had people not pass the TPA and not get credit? Yeah. But let me tell you why. They were given the opportunity to revise. They were given a due date for the revisions, and they just chose not to do it. And they just chose not to do it. They chose to just transfer to RBA and get an RBA and not be in the College of Ed. Okay? I mean, obviously you're getting scored and you're getting graded, but the ultimate responsibility is back on you. Okay? Do we give you plenty of opportunities to fix things and to revise things? More than we should, I think. But obviously, we want everyone to be successful. We want to see everyone successfully complete our program, and so that's why we have all of these things in order in the process to make sure that you're successful. That's why we have a plan of improvement. That's why we, do these types of things. Okay. So you have to receive appropriate evaluations, no unsatisfactories. You have to have good attendance and have it logged. You have to be successful in the capstone and successful in the TPA. Those are the main things. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, any other questions? No questions? No questions, a bad question? Nothing? Yes?
So if we are interested in a TIR position, how do we move that?
Okay, so here is kind of what happened this semester with the TIRs, okay? I had 3 elementary TIRs in Wayne County. I had an English high school TIR in Logan County, and I had an English middle school TIR in Kanawha County. So if there's a position that they cannot get filled, they will call me, usually. Now, I will say this, the Logan County student pursued hers. She kept an eye on the bids and on what was up, and she knew somebody at the school, so it was just good. She was just in communication, good communication. But typically, they'll call me and say, do you have anyone who qualifies for a TIR in such and such? If anybody in here was math, I could have had them hired, months ago. And so then from there, I look at who I have. So let's say this English, the English one in Kanawha County. Let's just use it for an example. So the first thing I did was I took my group of English students and I looked at all of them and figured out who they were. And you have to meet certain requirements. You have to have at least a 3.0 GPA, and you have to have the PLT passed. Done. Those 2 things. So when I go through, I look, that was the only one that had the PLT passed at that time. So I called her and I asked if she'd be interested. and then we just kind of went from there. The same thing with those elementary ones. The first elementary job that came up, I went through and I wrote down the names of everybody who had passed the PLT. Then I looked at, their GPAs, and I had 3 people who qualified at the time. Now, one of the people who ended up in a TIR in elementary passed her PLT after the semester had started. She went ahead and signed up for it, got it taken, and then she was interested, and then it came up. And so I called her. One of the students who I rushed out for as a possible for the TIR, I talked to him quite a bit about it, and he just decided it wasn't for him right now, Sometimes they're at schools where you have to travel a little bit, But, for an example, 2 of the students in the TIR, I actually met them at the school. I actually drove one of them to the school because I was friends with the principal, because they were really looking for somebody. I thought this person would be a good fit. I didn't want him to get lost. It was out in the country a little bit. And so I just met him, and we just went together and talked about the specifics. And so if that is something that you are seriously interested in, I would sign up for the PLT today and get that out of the way. Because if you have that box checked, that's one of the first things I look for when I'm trying to find people. That's a good question. Anybody else? Yes.
Yes, I'm in the MAT program,
Mhm.
and for clinicals, I use some previous long-term subs that I had. So I don't have a Marshall ID badge, but I have
Okay.
one for the county that I'll be in.
Okay.
Will that work?
You already have like a county sub badge or
Yeah.
something? Yeah, you could totally wear that. MAT students, that's a great question. A lot of times you guys have been on first class permit, so you already have an ID for the county. That's totally fine. If you don't have a clinical ID badge or a county ID badge, and you need one, the ID office is not down here anymore. It's over in Drinko. So you need to zip over there at some point today and get an ID badge. I think they're $5. Yes.
Do those badges expire?
No. No, so yours should still, it should still be fine.
Hey Amanda.
Yeah.
I typically tell MAT students they need to get a Marshall badge.
Okay.
Unless they're employed at the school,
Okay.
because when you're in the school, you are a Marshall student, not a sub for that county, so you need to be identified as a Marshall student.
Okay. Well, there you go.
And you can go over there to Drinko and get one today. They have the list already with all
Yes.
the names on.
That was my next thing I was gonna say. There shouldn't be a question if you need to get one. They can pull that, so that's not a problem. Any other questions? These are all really good questions, by the way. Yes?
Gonna ask about the PLT.
Okay.
Let's see. What all should I study to be prepared for the PLT?
That's a great question. I would talk to somebody who took it last semester in your content area and ask them how they prepared.
Right.
That's usually the best way. The PLT is a little different, and it's different for secondary, compared to elementary. So who in here has taken the PLT? Oh, a lot of you. Okay, lots of people. Yeah, get your hand up. If you weren't listening, you're spaced out on me. So, Alec, my answer would be to just get with somebody who's already taken it. I know Randall Miller in your group has already taken it, so maybe just reach out to Randall and just ask him, what he saw a lot of. So, a lot of the PLT is a lot of, I felt like when I took it was a lot of classroom management stuff and some things like that. Did y'all feel the same way? Yeah.
Amanda,
Yeah.
I have what I have been told is a really good study guide that I did not create. It was given to me by another faculty member before I came to Marshall.
Uh-huh.
But I share it with my students every semester. If you'd like,
I
I'll
would
send
love
it
that.
to you, and
Yeah.
you can send it out to everyone in here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you can continue to use it for semester to semester if you want.
Perfect. Okay, so Dr. Allen's going to send me that, and then I will forward it to all of you. Yes?
Okay, so you mentioned that, I just want to make sure.
That's okay.
So like the day that I have a seminar currently, like I just take that day off of school, take PLT in the morning, then come to the seminar, and that's acceptable?
I would usually work that out with you. Yeah, yeah. Something else. What I forgot? Touch about the PLT. Touch about seminar. I don't know. It'll come back to me. Okay. Any other questions? Everybody's feeling a little antsy. Okay. So Right now, it is 11, or it's 10:45. Dr. Lucas will be here at 11, so let's break until then. We will start promptly at 11, though. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you. I've already sent this to you, so listen. When you need a pep talk in the morning, watch this video. It says, teachers keep teaching, students keep studing. So it's pretty great. So watch the pep talk, and then if you need to reach me, most everybody in here knows how to reach me and knows how to get a hold of me. But there is my contact information. Again, I am still in the basement. After spring break, I'm supposed to be back on the second floor. Thank you, Jesus. So anyway, I'll be moving back to my own space back then. So, like I said, if you need to reach out to me, that's where I am right now. Let's break until 11, and we'll get started back up, okay? And if you have any questions you need to ask in between then, I'm available. Just follow me over here. I gotta turn this camera off. That's okay. No, I'll pause. I like to.